What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, yesterday we had a pretty big indie showcase happen that was hosted by Microsoft and IGN. In this showcase, we had updates for current titles and a look at some pretty interesting upcoming indie games, and we'll go over some of those announcements here today. Also, we are going to be talking about this controversy that's hit Nintendo's next big title at the end of May when it has to do with its frame rate. Well, one developer gave their thoughts and perspective on it that actually went viral online based on some of their reasoning. And then we're also going to be talking about Starfield, as we had some new details around updates that are coming up soon, as well as that big DLC that is set to launch later on this year. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps it a ton. And if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members to the channel do get Newswave early and ad-free. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with Fallout, the series on Amazon Prime that absolutely took the internet by storm. And now we have some numbers to back that up, actually. We can see this is posted up over on X from Variety. They say Amazon Prime Video's Fallout pulled in 65 million viewers in its first 16 days of availability, according to the streamer, with the first season dropping in its entirety on April 10th. That makes it the second most watched title ever on the platform, and the most watched title since the debut of Lord of the Rings of Power back in 2022. That is very, very impressive, actually, just for the Fallout brand and the franchise. Obviously, having exposure to that many people, which also means that when Season 2 comes around, there's going to be a ton of hype leading up to it. I mean, this first season we had, the 8 episodes, were very, very good, and I do recommend more people checking it out. I ran a poll, actually, just to see how many people in the audience have had a chance to watch it or even watch all the way through, so we'll take a look at that split later on in the show. But yeah, I mean, impressive numbers here for Fallout. 65 million viewers already. It's no wonder that they had 5 million people log in across the Fallout franchise to check out the games. Also, we had Housemarque tweet something out that got people really, really excited at the prospect of maybe some kind of update for Returnal or maybe their next big game. See, this was posted up, and it looks like it's a video that just says tomorrow, so today, and underneath of this, everyone was like, oh, Returnal stuff, new game, new IP sequel. Well, then Dark Horse Comics came in, quote tweeting it, and also said tomorrow. So yeah, I guess now we can assume it's something when it comes to media outside of gaming. So comics, maybe? It's hard to say, but yeah, that immediately killed the hype for many, many people out there who are hoping it would be more video game related. Not really the case, although it's not too surprising either, since, as we just talked about with Fallout, going outside of gaming, if done correctly, can really broaden the reach of some of these intellectual properties that are just based in games. So I guess at some point today, we'll have the full announcement from Housemarque or Dark Horse Comics, but yeah, at this point, I wouldn't expect it to be anything really game-related. Certainly not any kind of sequel or new game from Housemarque. Oh, and it looks like Microsoft is testing a new dashboard for the Xbox Series that I think looks pretty good. See, it was shared by Tom Warren over on X, saying that Microsoft is testing this new Xbox Home UI dashboard. It lets you enable game art backgrounds with any dynamic or regular background. So, to my understanding, I feel like they did this, I think it was last year. So they've already played around with the idea of the background kind of changing with your icons. But in this case, you're able to also mix it in with a static image or live background. So it'll kind of change that. But then if you maybe hover over something that's more system-based, like your settings, it will then change back to your dynamic background. It's kind of building off of sort of what we had on, like what Sony launched their PS5 with, where the background will change based on the game icon that you're hovering over. Microsoft's still playing into that and trying to figure out really their UI. They've been trying to figure out their UI this generation, but also going back to last generation. I like the idea of the background being this customizable though, and I hope they continue down that path because it's something I'd like to see even for Nintendo and Sony. Microsoft seems to now be leading the way with some of this. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with some of the highlights from that Xbox ID showcase. And when this came up, I was checking in on it here and there as I was taking some notes, and also checking in on Xbox Wire, as they have an entire write-up, which I will also link down below, because the stream with IGN ended up being 3 hours long. And I thought, wow, this show is 3 hours? Well, they had sort of this hour pre-show, and then they had like a podcast that followed up on the main show, which was roughly 50 to 60 minutes long. See, towards the end, they also sat down and just played some of the indie titles. So that was actually nice to see them just in a raw gameplay setting. But we did have a lot of games getting revealed here. So I, again, link to Xbox Wire's post down below. They did it in an alphabetical order. So I'll just show you some of the clips here from that IGN stream that they did as we go through. And I'm going to go pretty quick because so many were here, starting from the top with 33 Immortals. This is a co-op roguelike for, you guessed it, 33 players. We've seen it before, as this was one that they had already announced going into it, but they did have an appearance here again for it. Then we have All You Need Is Help. Aster Blade of the Monolith. This is a hack and slash ARPG. This is one of the games that had extended gameplay for the showcase. So if you're interested in this one, I would recommend checking out the 10 to 15 minutes they took to actually sit down and play some of this game. Then we have Centum, Commando's Origins, Dungeons of Hinterberg, For the Sundered Tribes. Then we had a montage where they went Depersonalization, Firework, Keplerth, Volcano Princess, and The Rewinder. Now, The Rewinder is out now on Game Pass, so we did have one that they just kind of dropped right then and there. Pretty cool. Then we have Hangry. This is a hack and slash RPG with food, I believe. It's an interesting concept there, but that's why you tune into some of these indie presentations, is to see just some very odd and unique ideas. Then we have Jackbox Naughty Pack, Keylocker. This is out summer 2024. Lost Records Bloom and Rage, also a 2024 title. This is from Don't Nod. Pal World. So to me, this should be one of their big announcements. They did kind of treat it that way, but there is an update that's going to bring new pals into the game. That's releasing in June. So we're looking at like this summer release that they're going for there. Not too far off, but yeah, Pal World right now is being really a console exclusive for Microsoft on their Xbox, and of course also being on PC. This is one that I would continuously push. They have Promise Mascot Agency, Stampede. This is a racing royale. Sulfur. This one caught my eye, I think, because of the interesting art style. I'll say it's a roguelike first-person shooter. Then we have Tales of Iron 2, Whiskers of Winter, Times and Galaxy, Vampire Survivors, which this is like another big one that they made the announcement for, since this is a very popular game, but they're getting 2 new characters, 2 new stages, 2 new weapons, 1 evolution, 1 new passive, and 6 more achievements in this update. And overall, there were a ton of different games, as you can see, that were showcased here. Aster, I think, was a big one that stood out to me, and that also might be because they spent some time really showcasing it, but there were definitely some interesting ideas here. And to see updates for Pal World and Vampire Survivors is very welcome, as those are games that are basically ongoing at this point, more so Pal World really overall, since they're still working towards their big 1.0 release. But I'd say a pretty good show. The stream itself probably went way longer than it needed to, but IGN, of course, partnering with Microsoft on this one, wants to really take full advantage of this showcase. They had a lot of people tuning in, but let me know which games really caught your eye from this Xbox ID showcase. Next up, let's talk about some controversy around Nintendo, because what else is new? But this has to do with Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, this remake that Nintendo is bringing out here in, just about a little more than 3 weeks, I think now. And as someone who really enjoyed this game on the GameCube when it came out, I'm going to be picking this one up and checking it out here, because it does legitimately look like Nintendo has done quite a bit to, we'll say, spruce up the game. And in doing so, they have reduced the frame rate from the original, which was 60 frames per second, down to 30 frames per second. And that has been a pretty big talking point online right now, because it does feel like a significant downgrade. And yet, while yes, it is an RPG, there are a lot of action time-based attacks and elements in those different battles that, could be affected by some of the frame rate being lowered and the timing, that sort of thing. Well, we had an interesting perspective that was dropped on X, and this actually comes from the Bayonetta Origins director, which we can see their string of tweets here. And at the start, they say they empathize with the devs of Paper Mario on Switch with the whole 30 versus 60 FPS situation. They say they tried for a long time to get Cereza and the Lost Demon running at a stable 60 FPS, and they mentioned that they were able to maintain 60 FPS in certain stages, but it wasn't possible to keep the same visual fidelity and hold that frame rate in the forest. So they could either leave it unlocked with frequent dips to 30 or 50, or cap it and hold a steady 30 FPS. And I say it may not look visually complex, but there was actually a lot of post-processing going on under the hood. The colors fading in like ink as you move through the world, the shading patterns on objects, the way the world curves around you to see further into the distance, and they go on to theorize that seems like things that Nintendo had to sort of deal with and even compromise over for Thousand Year Door to look the way that they want. And it sounds strange because people still look at Nintendo as being just graphically inferior, pretty much against the rest of the industry. But this is the case for something like Thousand Year Door, where Nintendo probably did have this art style in mind, obviously with the original already there, trying to mimic it, but then also upgrade and really modernize it with some of the new effects they have access to, say on the Switch with that Tegra X1, which, yeah, significant leap over the GameCube, obviously. But in doing so, yeah, the frame rate, it really comes down to, would people rather have 30 FPS or a very, very unstable 60 FPS? And I will tell you, an unstable 60 FPS or just uncapped frame rate is going to be just a worse experience overall. I'd prefer them to just be able to get it to 60 and that's it, but if you got to cap it at 30 for it to not look like this jittery mess on screen, that's just kind of the way it is. And you have to remember, we're still dealing with hardware for the Switch from 2015 with that X1. So this is a game I would like to see Nintendo go back to and patch when their next system comes out. Again, hopefully, actually maybe like less than a year from when this game comes out. And they go back and patch it, move it up to 60 FPS, and who knows, maybe have upscaling just enabled so it can get a resolution, yes, below 4K, but then at least push it up and upscale with NVIDIA's different techniques with DLSS to a decent enough 4K image. But yeah, this is Nintendo has to look at the Switch and say, do we want the visual fidelity or do we want the frame rate? And they went the visual fidelity route, and maybe that's going to be surprising to people at this time, but here's hoping that next year we're talking about this game as a patch for the new system and it's 60 FPS, we'll see. Next up, let's talk about Starfield, as Todd Howard did give us an indication over a few things, and even opened up some questions for one part in particular. Now, this came from an interview with Kinda Funny, and it ran for about an hour or so, and Todd Howard and Greg Miller just kind of chatted about Starfield, Bethesda, even some of his watching habits on YouTube. But some of the key points that we were able to take away from this one, which did include Shattered Space DLC, as that is set fall 2024, according to Todd Howard. There's some additional details around that downloadable content, some of the setting and direction for it, but I'll leave that up to Kinda Funny in their interview there. Now, Todd Howard has also said he has no plans to retire anytime soon. I believe he even mentioned Shigeru Miyamoto before and how he just wants to work forever just about. Well, Fallout 5 is way off in the distance, and I feel like he would like to work on that, especially after what he's seen with the series recently with Amazon, even talking about his time on set and seeing that vision kind of brought into the real world. He seemed genuinely impressed, so that does seem like something that might motivate him to really be on board for Fallout 5 and get that game out there. Also mentioned city maps and shipbuilding coming soon for Starfield, which the fact that city maps took this long to get to Starfield is, just incredible stuff, but hey, it's coming at some point. Now, they did mention new display modes for consoles. And again, frame rate comes up, right? It's locked at 30 FPS on consoles because they weren't able to hold 60 FPS well enough, but there is that 40 FPS mode where if you're on a 120 hertz screen, you can enable it, and it is kind of that happy medium between 30 and 60. Maybe that's what they're alluding to. We'll see there. And Bethesda is not ruling out partnering with external developers on future games. So who knows, we could have more Fallout spin-offs like we had with New Vegas, or maybe something with Elder Scrolls. It's possible pretty much all the way around there, but this was, again, a very good interview, and I am curious to see what some of these updates for Starfield will be, yes, in the short term, but then also that big DLC Shattered Space coming out now, fall 2024. We'll keep an eye out for that one. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Remedy, who did release their Q1 2024 business review for investors. In there, they essentially outlined plans for some of their current projects and sort of where they are in development, with one catching a lot of people's eyes because it has to do with, yes, Max Payne. Now, we can see this is over on their business review. This is on page 3, and they outline all the different games. They have codename Condor. That is the multiplayer spin-off from the Control franchise. They say move to full production, meaning it has reached the final development stage before a game is launched. Based on wide internal playtests, we can see that the core loop is engaging, and the game brings a unique Remedy angle to the genre, so things moving along nicely there for codename Condor. Control 2 team has focused on finalizing the proof of concept stage, in which the game world, game mechanics, and visual targets are proven. We expect the project to advance to production readiness stage during the second quarter of 2024, so yeah, we're a ways off for Control 2 at this time. Max Payne 1 and 2, though, remember they're working with Rockstar on this one, this being the remakes for those titles. It's continued to production readiness stage. The game is expected to move into full production during the second quarter of 2024. So, I looked at this. Oh, and also codename Kestrel is continued in the concept stage. The team works to refine the game concept. All right, so Max Payne 1 and 2 remake. I'm very, very interested to see how this goes, especially after, well, we played Alan Wake 2. What looks to me like a lot of references, seemingly. You got to picture how maybe some of the Max Payne 1 and 2 styling and characters might look from that. But anyway, this moving to full production during that second quarter of 2024 makes me think this game would come out maybe first half of 2026. Now, you might go, wow, wait, why is it so long? Well, it's Rockstar, and if I had to really look at this and say, okay, it's coming out, if it's going into production, full production 2024, you gotta remember GTA 6 is next year, and I don't know if Rockstar wants to just put Max Payne 1 and 2 remake out there, potentially months away from GTA 6, which is going to be probably one of the biggest launches we've ever seen in gaming history. So with Max Payne 1 and 2 remake, I would expect that probably first half, maybe even second half of 2026. So we are, I think, a ways off of this game coming out, but doesn't necessarily mean we can't see it sometime next year. And in fact, I do kind of think that's about the time for them to show it off, at least give us an idea as to how it'll look, some of the styling, direction, maybe some gameplay updates that they're doing for it. And hey, who knows, maybe that'll fit in nicely for like a Summer Games Fest 2025, we'll see. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, have you watched the Fallout series on Amazon Prime? So 55% say they haven't watched any of it. They have 28% saying, yes, I've watched all 8 episodes. 17% say yes, but I'm not done it yet. And I mean, really looking at that, 55% of people not watching it, they may just not have Amazon Prime, since that's technically a requirement. I know there are ways you can watch these shows without having the streaming service. I get that. But still, not having Amazon Prime, for example, has kept Nate from watching it. And he seems interested in it, but is it worth for him to sign up for Amazon Prime to watch just this one series? That's tough, a tougher sell there if you're not necessarily going to be ordering stuff from Amazon pretty much constantly. But still, the series itself is very, very good. And 65 million people watching what ended up being a very good Fallout series. It puts Bethesda and Microsoft in a very interesting situation. And in fact, that actually takes us into one of our comments. This from Shadowhunter says, perfect time for New Vegas 2, especially since they own Obsidian. Well, the thing with that is Obsidian does seem kind of busy right now. They're working to release Avowed at the end of this year. And then remember, they also have Outer Worlds 2 coming up. They showed that trailer where they didn't have anything to show, but they still made a trailer, and they made fun of themselves for doing so in the trailer. So they're going to go to Avowed. They'll have to do some post-release work, obviously patching, that kind of thing. Who knows, maybe more content if it goes well. But then Outer Worlds 2 will be a big focus for them. So I don't really think Obsidian is necessarily going to be available for something like a New Vegas 2. And I think Bethesda will have to kind of look elsewhere for different spin-offs. And I think Fallout is a prime target for them to have another studio come in and do a spin-off for it, at least as kind of a stopgap, since Fallout 5, It's gonna be a while for that one. And then we'll go to a comment from the members video. This is from Harold, who says, you know what? Why hasn't Bethesda put any of the Fallout games on Switch? I feel like that would have been a no-brainer and easy to port. Just put Fallout 3 in New Vegas. They don't even have to do 4. The games would also fit on their own cartridge without need of a download. So I do think it's still possible that Fallout 3 and New Vegas could find their way to the Switch. I also think it's possible that maybe Bethesda and Microsoft then works into Nintendo's first year for their next platform with a bunch of Fallout games. I mean, think about it. Fallout 3, New Vegas, Fallout 4. I mean, that'd be pretty nice lineup to have of games for a new system that is going to be incredibly popular and sought after just after this whole Fallout series took off on Amazon and people are just out there looking for it. Should be a nice clashing of just mainstream consumers there. So I think that might be a strategy for Bethesda. And I'll tell you this, it wouldn't shock me if they showed up with something from the Fallout franchise ready to go for Nintendo's next system whenever they are ready to show off that Switch 2. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where's the Xbox ID showcase? What were some of your favorite games that were shown there? Then also, what about the Paper Mario 1000 Year Door 30 FPS controversy? And Starfield, are you going to head back to this game when the DLC comes out, or maybe even check it out for the first time? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.